It's a lot of work, but most important thing is to stay focused, and this is what we're here for. Back when we were back in Columbus, you had ability, when you got off later in the night to be able to do some of your stuff that you had to do. But when we're here, the number one most important thing is to focus on the guys and what's at hand right now. So, got some good people that are working for you back home that you can kind of not worry about that and just focus all your energy on this right here. Got to be, and I promise that to the guys. I promise that to coach. And I promise that to myself, and that to me is the most important thing. And that's what's hard. It's tough. You wake up at night with some things in your mind and ideas, but you just got to kind of straighten yourself out, remind you why you're here and what your objective is, and then continue to push forward.
Is it emotional or is it sentimental that this could be your final assignment in Scarlet and Gray?
Well, you feel like it's not going to be your last one, so it might be one of the easier, not easier things, but the ability to not have to worry about it and think about it a lot because there's so much on your plate right now that you haven't thought about those things. I think one of the tougher things was just as you left before the bowl game and you start trying to clean out some stuff and make some boxes and get rid of some of the stuff that you got or put it away, and that's when maybe it started to hit you a little bit. But you know me, I try not to allow myself to have those thoughts and those things to stay focused on what it is we're doing. But it's with what's going on, it's not the easiest thing in the world.
But you don't have time to. You have such a big job ahead of you. But you
That's the best thing about it is there's no time to reflect, and that people would say that might be crazy, but you've heard me say it before. Time to reflect will be later on. Maybe when you do have some of that downtime or that moment, but there's no time right now to think back, to reflect on some of those things. You got a task at hand. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. You got the utmost respect for these guys, these kids, these players, Coach Meyer, my alma mater, to make sure the number one most important thing is to focus on what's the task at hand. I'm still focused on what's happening here in Arizona, and that's the most important thing. And those kinds of things we'll let wait until the next couple weeks and get this journey done with first.
Do you take a page out of Tom Herman's book? You went through the same thing 2 years ago doing a head coaching job and sticking around in the playoffs. Do you kind of use
Yeah, I mean, I talked with Tom before this kind of went down, and just to get some of his thoughts and the different things that he did and how he tried to stay focused and keep himself in line. And I think one of the number one things was to have good people around you, and that's one of the biggest things I learned 6 years ago when I was put in a situation where I had to do some different things. And some of the things I didn't do well was trust and rely on those that are around you, the ones that you can really rely on and put some more stuff on their back. So I've had the good fortune to be able to do that with some guys back home to put a lot on their plate. And Marcus Freeman and Doug Phillips are back there kind of holding the fort down, which allows me to make sure the most important thing that's at hand right now is this game. It's very difficult. Obviously, we played them I think 4 years ago in the Orange Bowl. Obviously similar, but different in a lot of ways. I think the number one thing is obviously Deshaun and the ability for him to make every throw, to be an incredibly balanced attack offensively, is what scares you as a defense. When people are more one-dimensional, and even obviously we didn't do a great job of it 4 years ago when we played them in the Orange Bowl, but I think they were a little bit more of a true running team. Obviously with Sammy Watkins and some of those guys, they had the ability to throw the football, but I think that the biggest difference might be the quarterback Taj as opposed to Deshaun and his ability to be a true make every throw quarterback, the guy that's going to play for a long time at the next level, a guy with his head on his shoulders to truly run the offense the way they want it run.
You've been around a lot of good defensive lines, including the one you played on. How does this defensive line stack up? As far as the backups like with Bosa, Holmes, Landers, are backups on this defense. How good is this defense?
Well, with the exception of the 96 line, it's probably the best there. Now, it's when you start to look at defensive lines, and again, last year you looked at our defensive line, and you obviously had Joey Bosa was one of those guys that just ultimately stood out and had all the attention and everything. But I think we've gotten better, and the better with the depth and the ability for 8 guys to play. And there's not a drop off. I couldn't tell you who the starting ends are, and it doesn't really matter. 2 of them might be here today, but there very well could be Jalen Holmes and Nick Bosa, and along with Sam and Taekwon. I mean, it doesn't matter who's in the game, and the ability to get those guys in the game is more difficult for us because you want them all out there all the time. So the depth we've got the way Coach Johnson has kind of rolled those guys, his ability to have them grow throughout the entire season, keep them fresh, I think is the key to our success. I mean, there's so many. I mean, you would say, oh my goodness, sometimes you look out there and Bosa's, that 97 has flashes of what you saw last year. The expectations for him was so high, so I don't know if you have seen the growth that, what you saw from the very beginning, but there's so many guys. I mean, Jalen Holmes has come on so much, and I know that everybody had such high expectations, but from last year to where he is right now, you would have him out there in any situation. There's some inside guys. Draymond Jones, nobody knew who Draymond Jones was last year. Obviously, he was redshirted. His ability, I know he's a starter, but his ability to the growth that he's had from game one to right now, he's always had the athleticism. He's always had the ability to make some big plays. But the way he's taken on double teams and doing the things we need him to do, again, I think is the key to our success. And I think when people ask me, I think that's where it comes down to. I mean, we do what it is that we do, and they're going to do what they do. And I think the ability for us to be able to match up out there is going to be huge. I mean, I don't think I know we haven't seen a receiver crew like this all year. We've faced some good guys, and we faced some good crews. Nothing with this versatility, this size, this speed, and also with the ability to throw the ball down the field. Sometimes you get against a group of receivers that really have some ability, but sometimes they don't always have the guy that can get them the ball. And the ability for Deshaun and them to throw the ball down the field. I mean, he throws an incredible deep ball, but they got some incredible guys that have the ability to go up and get it as well. So I think that is going to be a huge matchup. I know for us, that's one of those things that we've been tested a little bit, but never tested like we're going to be tested on Saturday. That's what worries you. I mean, you can be in perfect coverage, and it doesn't matter sometimes, and maybe you have a guy over the top of him, an ability. We got one guy that we like that, really can go up and get balls and find balls in Malik Hooker. But again, it's one of them shots that's up. It's a 50-50 ball, and anybody can come down with it. Now when the ball isn't thrown as well, we feel like we're in a lot better position, a lot better situation to be able to make those plays. But the way Deshaun throws it, that's going to be a big matchup in the game. Staying focused, having good people back home to be able to not worry about those things. Spend a little bit of time maybe late at night just catching up on what happened. But I've been here for so long and got such invested in not just this program and this university, but these kids, these guys that I look them in the eyes and I know there's all my focus is on this right now, and that's what's most important. Anytime I start to lose focus, all I do is look at those guys I coach on a daily basis, those guys I've been around, and know that this is a chance of a lifetime, and I wouldn't let anything slip it up. And everybody would ask probably about the ability to be able to do that in this situation. But it starts, I think, from the way he runs the entire program. It's an extreme ownership, and I think that's the difference when all of a sudden you start to see, and I know playoffs are different in the sense that, you start to see some of these guys that maybe aren't playing or, well, what's their motivation to play in some of these games? This isn't that. But the reality is the way the program is run, with everybody so fully invested, and I'm talking about as a coach, whether you got another job, whether you got a player that might be thinking about the NFL, the ability to be so fully invested when you get to these situations. And last year was a great example. And some people would say, well, okay, you're not in the playoffs. You guys are maybe disappointed in where you are and what you're doing. And the reality is for those guys to come out, the guys like Zeke Elliott and Joey Bosa, to come out and play the way they were playing, the focus that they were done, it's not just something you do in the postseason. It's something that your entire program's built around. And I know that's one of those huge things that I've learned in the last 5 years with Coach, that, hey, you don't just bottle this thing up for this last 4 weeks to say, hey, let's make this run, and how do we do this? It's the way you run the entire program, the ownership that each and every one of these guys take in it, as well as coaches. That's what votes well at the end of the year. I think his ability to push all the time is the key. And I think keeping that pressure on guys and understanding that. But if you change who you are, I think it's really difficult because guys can't get a little bit more adapted and not saying comfortable, but they can't understand exactly what the situation is. And Coach's ability to be who he is all the time, is I think what gives us that extra edge. It's not like, well, okay, this week we're gonna change up. I'm gonna be a funny, humorous guy. I'm gonna have a lot of fun. No, no, no. Those guys know who he is. They know how he goes about his business. That's the way the program is built, and I think that's what gives you the opportunity, consistency in your leadership, because he's a masterful motivator. On a daily basis, his ability to do that, but it's the consistency he has on a daily basis that those guys believe in it. They're 18 to 22-year-olds, and motivation is the biggest thing that you can do with 18 to 22-year-olds. I mean, we have an ownership we've talked about in our program, but the reality is we're going to practice 15 times for this game. And all of a sudden you keep counting that thing down and counting it down. It's another practice, another practice. Every day there has to be a little something. And that's what Coach does an unbelievable job of. And for an ability to create some of that controversy, create some of that bulletin board material, we all need stimulation. And I think that's the thing that Coach does such a great job of. But, when you can get outside sources to be able to help you, you're always looking for ways to motivate your guys. Well, I mean, it starts with the management of the game. Obviously, I told him we played these guys 4 years ago, and it was a similar team, and they had some incredible wideouts and those abilities with Sammy Watkins and those guys. But the ability for Deshaun to actually truly make every throw, the deep balls are the ones that he throws an unbelievable ball on. And it's not just the wideouts. Everybody's a viable option. Obviously, we know he can run, but his ability to have the balance to be able to do it all is the thing that makes them, to me, the most explosive. You can't say, okay, we're going to stop the run and we're going to make them beat us throwing it. You can't say, okay, we're going to stop the pass and make us beat a run. The balance of what they do, his ability to not only throw the deep ball but make every throw, I think is what really, really makes them go. I don't know. Sleep's overrated. They say you'll sleep plenty someday when you're dead. So don't try to overdo it a little bit. But I mean, again, we know that the most important one of those things is for us is we have got to have the energy for our kids. And if we don't have the ability to turn some of this stuff off, focus in, lock in, get some rest, and have the ability to have your energy when we go to practice, when we get around our guys, we'd be doing it a disservice. So. Yeah, I mean, there's not nearly as much. The mind starts to race, but the reality is that ability to focus back and say, okay, where's my energy got to be spent? When we get our 4 or 5 hours with our guys, we got to be on our toes. We got to have the utmost energy. We can't be dead, tired because we haven't had enough rest. So the ability to be able to balance those things as a coach is what we've got to be able to do to give our kids the most. The college football is a game of emotion. It's a game of momentum. It's a game of emotion. There's plenty. Everybody's got both sides. We got good enough players. There's a lot of teams out there that got good enough players. The ability to get the most out of your players, to me, is what it's all about. And how do you do that? You got to build an utmost trust in them. They got to have an utmost trust in you. That when you want to push them and you want to drive them and you want to do those things, that you have the ability. And we got such great kids, but you still got to build that. Everybody's grown up different. Every one of these kids has had a different background. They've come from, different parenting, different high school programs, and your ability to say, well, who's the best coach in the country? Who has the best scheme? It doesn't matter. The ability, the real thing is who can get the most out of their guys, who can get those guys to truly deep down inside believe in what it is they're doing. Eliminate all those human elements that are out there, and then go play. And I think, from the top down, from the program being built around, the extreme ownership to everything that we do, to each one of these guys believing every one of us coaches as leaders, as guys that got their best interests in mind. That when it comes down to it, we're going to put them in situations that's going to give them the best opportunity. And, sometimes that means push them and drive them and making sure they understand that they're fine. Their minds might be tired, but they can't allow that to happen. And, it comes out of that trust. I tell them all the time. I say, I wouldn't ask you to do anything I wouldn't ask my own son to do or my own daughter to do. And that might be a little crazy sometimes, but the reality is, if they believe that in you, I think you get the most out of them.
Hey, Luke, how much is playing Oklahoma, Wisconsin,
I mean, again, that's what they do. The ability to play in those big games, and not just play in those big games, but come those games playing out the way they do. From Wisconsin to overtime to the team up north. I mean, just the way they're played, to being down. I mean, that's what builds the character of your team. That's what builds being able to handle that adversity. If you went into this game, if we kind of skated through the entire season, maybe had that one ding, that one loss, and then really kind of just had to be able to skate through it and blow a lot of people out, you wouldn't really know what you got. But the ability for us to be in the situations that we've been, even the Penn State game, I mean, that was for the taking. And the team up north, the Wisconsin, all those ones that we had the struggles in, it has really built the character of the team. And I think that's where you don't worry, because these guys, there's no stage too big for them because of all the situations that they've been in. Yeah, and I think when you really start to evaluate them, you got to evaluate them sometimes in those games that are a little bit different. I'm not saying that the NC State game is not one to evaluate, but 18 to 22 I'm not sure it was maybe the same focus and the same attention to detail on some of those things. I think the thing that you've seen is he has an utmost confidence in what he's doing. His arm is as good an arm as there is in college football, and he believes it. He knows it. And I think at times it maybe got him in some situations where he's tried to make every throw. But the reality is, if you really start to break down some of those big games, when does he play best? He plays best in those big ones, and his ability to be able to run it as well as throw it.
When you look at their receiving core with Kane, Williams, they're averaging like 360 again through the air. From a secondary standpoint, how do you prepare for an air attack like that?
It's not easy, but I mean we've got a lot of good guys on our side that we have to take our wideouts. We actually ask our guys to be unselfish, and we take some of our starting wideouts. Maybe not all the starters, but the guys that are playing a little bit, or even the backups, and they got to come down and be the receivers for us. And we got to get the best speed and the best shots and the best looks that we can to prepare our guys. Because again, I mean, do we have somebody that's 6'3", 6'4", can go up and get the ball? Well, we do, and we put our guys in those situations so that they, most importantly, feel like they're comfortable in the situation when it happens. It's going to happen. The ball's going to be thrown up. It's going to be a 50-50 ball, and we're going to have to go up and make the play. And I can at least say that we've played against really good guys in the last 12 practices, and we put them in those situations, and I believe they feel confident in what they're doing. Well, I think it's not just big games. I mean, if you broke down our schedule with Coach Tress and Coach Meyer, I talked to him about it yesterday. It's very similar in how we practice, when we practice, the way we go about it, how we focus on the guys and not getting them up too early and those kinds of things. But it's just a different leadership style and the way your program is kind of designed. So it's not getting ready for big games that people always say, well, this guy's a big game coach. Well, the reality is, if they got a big game program that's built that the whole way, then I think that's what votes for success. When you just wait for them big games to say, okay, as a coach, I'm going to change, I'm going to motivate now, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Now your kids don't believe and buy in all the time.